Hi, everyone. I have Cherie on here, and she has a science perspective on things. She studied psychology and research in college. She's been going through this type of pregnancy, and I find it pretty phenomenal that she's willing to open up about going through this because not all women are ready to talk about this. So, Cherie, could you tell us about your background in psychology?
Absolutely. So I knew early on that I wanted to go into healthcare. So I've studied advanced maths and sciences since elementary school. In high school, I began studying psychology and physical therapy. In college, I attended Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology. I also attended a school in Virginia studying clinical mental health counseling. I have worked in trauma research in low income communities for private healthcare centers, as well as studying researching trauma at Emory University.
Wow, that's amazing. So, going forward, how long have you the reason why ladies and gentlemen that I wanted to talk about her background is because even going through this you have to have a you become open to having this type of pregnancy. I mean, she's got a science background. Not too many people in the scientific world are willing to accept these pregnancies, so that's why I wanted to talk about her background. And going forward, how long have you been pregnant for?
I have been pregnant since early 2020. Um, that experience was interesting. You mentioned my science background. The majority of my friends are in science. Obviously, it's my industry. And so sharing my experience with them was interesting. I do have some close friends who, although they know science, they also believe in God. And so that has been a very important foundation for me moving through the pregnancy. So we've been together, mostly my friends and I, trying to figure it out, trying to understand where science falls short versus what my lived experience has been.
That's great. How long have you been pregnant for?
Since early 2020.
Oh, okay. All right. And what has been your biggest challenge going through this pregnancy?
That's a great question. My biggest challenge has been risking my relationships. I think the pregnancy itself is challenging. Once you accept it, it becomes a lot easier. This was not my first major health concern, nor was it my first experience where the modern medical community was not able to assist me in recovering my health. So I have had Crohn's disease and meningitis prior to this and had to seek alternative health care for treatment in those areas. So I was not completely blindsided by needing to seek alternative health care for this pregnancy. The amount of time it took to locate those supports was a little frustrating. And so that is a huge part of why I'm coming forward and speaking. Because it needs to be talked about. Women do need to be able to get support and treatment way sooner than I was able to. Um, but for me, the most challenging aspect has been my social relationships. When you share this with people, they don't always believe you. I have had some great experiences. People say, well, why would you lie? I believe you because it's a weird thing to lie about. And it's been great. And we move on and they support me and, they invite me out and they have sparkling cider instead of alcohol for me. And it's a really wonderful experience. I've also had people who have called my family and asked if I was crazy and should I be, admitted to a mental health institution. So that is on the less preferred spectrum of sharing. It damages relationships coming out with this. And so that for me has been the most challenging, actually having to test the strength of my relationships and tell friends and wonder whether or not the friendship will be able to maintain my truth and my experience.
Yeah. Understand. I've been there. I feel like sometimes I just don't talk about it, or I kind of see how the situation or how the people are communicating with me, and then I kind of I might tell them the next week or the next day that I see them, especially when they ask how long I've been pregnant for. I feel like it's not something I want to hide. I definitely came to that like around year 2 of being pregnant for this long. So that's good.
Yes, it's not anything to hide. I'm not ashamed of my experience or my baby. So I don't want to hide. I don't want to lie to anyone and have them thinking that like this is something that's happening and people need to know about it. It needs to be discussed. We all need to be informed. The world would be a better place with more knowledge. And so I'm glad that you are sharing, and I hope that other women are encouraged to do the same.
Yes, definitely. So at what point did you hear about longer gestation?
Okay, extended gestation. I did not hear that term until I found midwife care. Prior to that, I had heard of cryptic pregnancy. I don't believe that the definition of cryptic pregnancy fit what I was experiencing is defined as a woman not knowing she's pregnant at least 5 months and maybe up until she gives birth. But that is still under the assumption that she's having a common 9 to 10 month pregnancy. I was well aware or highly suspected that I was pregnant early on into the pregnancy. So for me, cryptic pregnancy, it does not feel like a comfortable term. The only thing that is cryptic about it is that it is not identified by modern medical technology. Otherwise, I'm fully aware, and so that definition did not sit well with me. Extended gestation, however, does feel very comfortable. It also is limiting in that it does not tell you how long your gestation is going to be extended. So could be 14 months, it could be 3 years. You really have no idea.
Yeah, that's so true. I've gone from, I know at the beginning of my pregnancy, I would tell people I'm just having a high vibrational pregnancy because I couldn't explain it at the time. I think it was around month 6 that I began to learn about this or find Anshin and
Okay.
her midwifery services. Yeah. So as we've go forward, we realize that there's a lot of challenges that the child's father goes through as well. He may not voice that to us, but we definitely acknowledge that they face challenges just as much as us. What are your thoughts about that, Cherie?
I have seen studies that state men experience pregnancy along with their partners. Um, So I fully believe that men, fathers of cryptic pregnancy, are going through the same, if not more, of a difficult experience as mothers. I think as a mother, you have the privilege of having the baby in you, of feeling movement, of knowing how your body has changed and seeing the, slightly different symptoms and behaviors. Whereas for fathers, even in a common pregnancy, they are entirely removed. All they have is what they can see and feel. And when the belly does not grow at the rate that they might anticipate, it is a lot more difficult for them to feel connected and maybe believe that this is possible without being able to experience. I know as a woman, if I had heard about it from someone prior to experiencing it, I also might be a little lukewarm to the idea of it. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with fatherhood, things that mothers, women don't consider. We have no idea what goes on in a man's head when he's preparing to become a father. So, along with that uncertainty of the responsibility of being a father, you then add the uncertainty of a delivery date and the uncertainty of how healthy your child is. There's a lot of unknowns and fear that can come up from it. And so I do think that fathers of cryptic pregnancy need to be treated. They need a support group. They need conversation. They need to better understand what it is and how it works. Men in general need to be better informed overall and better included in the conversation of pregnancy.
Yeah, I agree. So Cherie has been working on a research study regarding this sort of pregnancy. I will put in the description a link so that you guys can take the survey. And also for if you have any stories or anything of that nature that you know or you've heard of a woman who's been pregnant for a longer period of time, feel free to reach out to Cherie. Do you want to go further on that, Cherie?
Yes. So the research that I'm conducting is to better understand the stories of women and their pregnancy experience. Since I have come out, which actually was just a couple months ago, it's very new for me. I've been having conversations with different women, and they are starting to reveal stories of women they knew in their 40s who had had children and had surprise babies, never knowing they were pregnant. Or maybe a friend's mother had been in the womb for 2 years and they didn't really believe her before they spoke to me about it. So there are a lot of conversations about pregnancy that are not being had. And so my first objective in doing this research is to get those stories to come forward so we can start to look through and identify some variables, some similarities between the cases so that we can actually construct a research study and start to compile data about what is going on, how to identify it. If we're not able to use blood and urine testing or ultrasound to determine the pregnancy, it's still incredibly dangerous both for mothers and babies to be pregnant and unaware. There's nutrition, there's, activities, socializing, all important things that an aware mother would want to be mindful of. And so we do need absolutely to figure out how to better research that, even if it's just being able to identify and send people to a trusted source instead of being unable to help them in total. I have not encountered any story from any woman, whether it was a surprise baby or otherwise, where she did not go to a doctor and seek help within 2 months of the baby being born. So women are aware that there is something going on. They may not know they are pregnant, and that lack of knowledge is most likely due to a negative urine or blood test, or going to a medical provider and being told that they are not pregnant. But I do know that most of the women I have encountered, most of the stories do suggest that a woman is aware that there is something going on in her body and that needs to be taken more seriously.
Mhm. Yeah, it's as if women say they didn't know they were pregnant because they weren't accepted medically by the doctor. They were told by the doctor they weren't pregnant. Mhm.
And that information can be very disastrous if you are basing your decisions on what a doctor is saying and you go out and you're drinking and partying. That's not good for you or your baby. That could have terrible effects for your ability to conceive in a future date. So there are a lot of things that are that needs to be determined through this research.
Yeah. So, Cherie, is there anything else you want to add or?
Yes,
Yeah.
there were a few other things. Let me look and see
I know
that I
you
did
said,
want to discuss.
yeah, one of the things that you have been doing that you opened your social life up with dating. Is that right?
Yes.
And how's that been just going through
Oh,
pregnancy?
that has been the fun. It's an uncharted journey for me. So I refuse to sit and be bored or feel that I can no longer socialize. I know a lot of times An unmarried pregnant woman is seen as having less social status or being less desirable for whatever reason people come up with in their minds.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. So there's no reason for me not to continue to engage in my own life. I don't know the details of my pregnancy, the duration of the gestation, the viability of the baby once it is born. So for me, choosing not to live is not an option. However, it's tricky and there is no rubric for how to move forward with it. At what point do you share? Do you choose to share? Do you not share? How do you expect someone to receive the information? How understanding are you if they do not receive it well? I mean, there are a lot of variables that go along with that, but I think that opening the conversation and making it more comfortable, making sure no one feels deceived, because with a common pregnancy, you start showing at a, pretty quickly, they can see it and it's a choice. You don't necessarily have to have the conversation because it's, visible. Whereas, at least in my case, my pregnancy is not overly, my belly is not very large all the time. It kind of comes and goes. And so depending on the type of clothing I wear, you could never know. There are people who still don't know. And so, or they'll see me, I'm like, oh, you don't look pregnant. I'm like, well, I am. So good talking to you. So it's curious. And I'm sure it's the first time they've ever heard of it when they're talking to me. And so I am mindful of how I share information and how responsible I am after having shared information. People don't always want to communicate, but I'm like, hey, I just shared something totally new, probably mind-blowing. Are you okay with information? It's okay that you're no longer interested in dating me. I don't mind that part, but is the information that I gave you sitting well with you? Are you absorbing it well? Because that is also a very important part of the responsibility of having information to share.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Of
Yeah,
course.
some women, they don't choose to date. I'm on that. I'm within that because I j- I just I don't know. I don't aspire to date, but I just leave it at that. But I also know there's women out there that do that, and for me, as you can see, I mean that's one of my paintings, and I just sit in front of my canvas after work, and that sometimes I've said that's my date, my canvas. What can I do with it today? So that's just where I'm at because I'm really big. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I've gained a lot of weight, and for me, I guess you say I'm just waiting to give birth. But I admire your vulnerability in stepping out and dating because,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I know there's other women that probably think about it, but then they're like, they don't actually step out because it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to tell people that we're going through this longer pregnancy.
It is totally not easy. So I will say that. Uh, for me, I wanted to be able to lead. And so if I'm leading research for me, I need to be leading in a lot of other areas and staying home and choosing not to socialize limits me and the way that I can experience the pregnancy. Um, I don't know how well the dating is going. I have not gotten great feedback, but it gives me a chance to really see what's happening in the world and feel the variety of ways that women may be feeling that I'm working with in my research. Being on my own and interacting with other people, learning how to exist with this longer pregnancy. Again, we have no idea how long it will last. So
Mhm.
for me, after 2 years, I was like, I'm done sitting and waiting. This baby clearly is on a different timeline. And so my life has to continue. I'm a social person. I have always been with friends at parties, being invited to places. So choosing not to go out felt like I was not being genuine with myself. And more than that, for me, it's showing my child how to be brave. One of my good family members said, oh my goodness, your baby's going to be so smart. It's been in the womb for so long. And so I have really considered that. And so I'm having more experiences that I feel like my baby can learn from in the womb, and learning how to navigate people and navigate uncomfortable spaces is something that I want my child to know. So a lot of my bravery is due to just being a mom and wanting my child to be braver than I have been.
That's amazing. Now, where are your parents at with this pregnancy? Do they support
My
you?
parents are amazing. They are my biggest support system. So I started my pregnancy when the pandemic started. So this is like mid lockdown during the pandemic. So it was challenging getting to a doctor. It was frightening going to a doctor because the numbers of COVID were pretty high. And my parents were right there with me the whole time, on days when I was afraid or uncertain. They were there, like, nope, you're pregnant. It's okay that the doctors don't understand it. We know it, and we are here with you. And they have treated me like a very normal, regular person the entire time, which I didn't realize until I became involved with the CPE community, how rare that is and how amazing that is that I have that support system. For me, coming forward, going public, doing this research was a lot about understanding what other women are going through. Having done the trauma research that I did, I know how exhausting life can be, especially when you have no support, especially when there's no one you can talk to about it. So, learning that there are women whose families are not involved and whose mothers are not supportive and who've not talked to anyone at all about what's going on, that was very upsetting for me. And so that is a large part of what encouraged me to begin this research and begin talking openly about my experience.
That's amazing. And thank you for doing this research. So I think that's all for this evening. And thank you again, Cherie, for being here. And we'll put the research link or the survey down below. And also, I'll put her email down below so that you can email her any stories or anything about this topic to help with the research.
Yes, I welcome anyone with any story to reach out to me by email. It's africanadreaming@gmail.com. Anything you would like to share, if you just want to be heard, I am here. It's confidential. I will read the messages. I will respond to you. I am here to support. Knowing that I have such an amazing support system, I would like to offer my support to anyone who feels alone or feels like they have no one to talk to about it, or who has no access to healthcare. These are very important things. This research is pivotal. Women are not given access to WIC, so there are a lot of government support that women with CPEG are not receiving because a lot of the insurance companies require a positive blood test in order for you to identify as a pregnant woman. And if you do not have that, then you cannot identify as a pregnant woman in this country. And that is tragic and that is deplorable and that needs to be changed urgently.
Mhm. Especially when we walk in and we have, I don't say we, most of us have a belly, you would walk,
Yes.
so it doesn't make any sense for them not to. accept that?
At 5 and 6 months along, I had just a little bit of belly, and I've had multiple doctors say, "Hey, are you pregnant?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I came here to get tested about." And they're like, "Well, my eyes see a pregnant girl, but the test says no, so I guess we're gonna go with technology." And I'm like, "Lady, that is silly." It was very silly. So I'm very grateful to have found a midwife who can see with her eyes and not with the tools. Technology is limited by the user or who created it. And so I hope that other women, families are able to be supported and able to understand this is a very real thing. You can, in fact, be pregnant for longer than 9 months. It is rare, but it does happen. It is not something that only, like, it's not a crazy person thing. I had learned about phantom pregnancy. This is not this, that there is a real baby that is really growing and it will be born. And we need to all accept that this is something that happens and start preparing our knowledge in our society to include women and babies who do not meet the common understanding of 9-month pregnancies.
Yes, we do. Mhm. Well, thank you again, Cherie.
Absolutely.
That's good.
I'm happy to come back again if you have any more questions. If your listeners have any additional questions for me, I'd be happy to share more.
That sounds good.